Hi, my name's Craig. I'm a partner at FSP responsible for data and AI. And today we're going to talk about the AI workplace revolution. So how is AI going to affect us in our workplace and the way that we go about our work and change the way that we behave with each other in the office? So I'm just going to introduce the panel to you.
I'm Nicole Gray. I'm a senior user-centric designer here.
Hi, I'm Lara Walker, a BI engineer within the data and AI capability.
Hi, I'm Dean Garza. I'm a learning and skills consultant with digital change and adoption.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because it's really pertinent to everybody, because everybody's work experience is going to change. And people are very much at the heart of it. So who's going to adopt it? Who's going to reject it? Who's going to create the space for them to want to be enthusiastic about it? So to get us going, can you all share a story with me about how you've brought AI into your workplace and how that makes you think about the future? So I'm going to start with Dean and come around this way. So Dean, how are you bringing AI into your work?
Well, currently I'm really into AI agents. It's really revolutionized the way I use my personal cloud storage and retrieving information and using it in new projects, and just really being an instant brainstormer to get things off the ground.
Oh, I love it. It's a companion for you.
Exactly, yeah, truly a co-pilot.
Yeah, awesome. Lara?
I use it personally to get through some mundane tasks. So writing up notes, summarizing long text and things like that. I like AI to give me a bit of a summary before I get started.
I think that's brilliant, apart from the fact we're on the same team, which implies I'm giving you mundane tasks to do. But once I've got over that, I think that's a really, really good way of thinking about it. Thank you. Noted for the future. Okay, we won't do that on the podcast, but we'll follow up later. Okay, make sure I give you more exciting tasks to do. And what about yourself? How are you using AI?
A bit of both of what Dean and Laura do, actually. So I use it to kind of as a sounding board. So when I'm coming up with some creative concept or something around storytelling, I will use it to bounce an idea off, get it to generate an example concept image, just to kind of see if I'm on the right track with my thinking. But likewise, I'll also use it to read long amounts of research or transcripts from, I don't know, things that I've done and just summarise it for me, just so I know I'm on the right track.
Awesome. So it's good because you're all bringing a positivity to it, right? So unfortunately, we are not representative of everyone in the workplace. Some people have got like fears about what's going to come in. So what we want to do is some myths. So what are some of the myths, untruths, weird things that people believe or worry about AI coming into the workplace? And then we're going to bust those myths, right? So maybe start with yourself, Lara. What's a myth in this space and how are you going to bust it for us?
Yeah, of course. I think a myth that we can definitely bust is that using AI at work is cheating. I think AI is going to revolutionize how we work, and that doesn't make it easier. It just allows us to use our time to do things that humans should do, if that makes sense. And I think traditionally people think that doing things for a longer amount of time or doing harder things that take more effort means that their work is harder. It probably gives them a boost of status or makes them feel like they've been productive and stuff like that. And I think moving forward, we have to embrace that we don't have to feel burnt out to feel productive. We don't have to feel like using technology to do technical things and using us as a human to do human things is a good thing. We need to embrace that. So yeah, it's not cheating to use AI, it's being efficient. And that means that we redefine what being productive is at work.
I love that. We were talking about it earlier, and it's sometimes the objects that show we've finished a piece of work are the mundane part. Right?
Exactly.
So I've done all this consultancy and given you a report,
Yeah.
right? You used AI in the report? Yeah, you've been cheating.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So there's almost like the definition of success is going to change as a result of AI coming into the workplace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The more emails you fired out or the more reports that you've written, PowerPoints that you've produced, at the end of the day, you're like, I worked really hard today. Yeah. And if you were the ones that crossed the I's and dot the T's on them, you're like, it was me that did this. When, it's fine to collaborate with another human on a project, so it should be fine to collaborate with AI.
And I think it's a good message to leaders, like to think of what that new success criteria
Exactly.
is. Yeah. Do you have a myth for us to bust?
A myth. So I think it's that AI is going to completely change, take my job, for instance. And I was just telling everyone here about an analogy I thought of for this scenario around driving a car. So traditionally, I drive a manual car. However, my husband's just bought himself a brand new, awesome Jeep Wrangler car, but it's automatic, right? And I am scared to drive it. And this is crazy, right? But the car's going to perform exactly the same thing. I'm still going to get to where I'm going. I'm still going to be in control. But because it's not something I'm used to, it's something new, it's an automation for something that I'm used to doing manually, I am a little bit hesitant. And I think that's how a lot of people go into this whole AI space, is fearing that, oh, it's gonna completely change everything. It's really not. You're still gonna be in control. You're still in the driver's seat. All you have to do is just think less about the stuff you have to do to get to where you're going. So I think it's not going to take your job. It's just going to give you more brain space to do your job better.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Dean, have you got another myth for us to bust? We've done them all.
Where to start with that one? I'll tell you, the one that comes to mind is AI exists in a vacuum, especially with organizations. They're thinking AI, we've got to get AI in. However, what they a lot of times don't take into account is how it interacts with the systems they're already using. So it's not some scary thing on its own. It's really just another component of what you're probably already using, and it helps you use it more efficiently.
Yeah, I love that idea. Like the journey analogy is coming out. You're going on a journey, and people sometimes embrace these things or not. So, like Dean, a lot of what you're doing is like education, like and particularly educating people on how to adopt AI. Any sort of stories to tell or anything to share about how we get people to be comfortable learning those new skills? Yeah,
I think we can take a lot of cues when we're talking about learning AI and any concepts in the workplace and beyond from kids. They're natural risk takers. So one of the things that keeps people from adopting is that aversion to risk. And then once it's been adopted, even more so, you think about what Nicole and Laura both have said they use AI for. It really just helps get over that first obstacle of just getting started and finding out information to make you better and to make projects you're working on better.
Excellent. So building those good immersive learning experiences, which I'm seamlessly going to bring to yourself, Nicole, right? Because of your user-centered design approach. Is there any different approaches we should be thinking about how we design like education or how we design interfaces in the world, the future going forward?
I think there's a principle in user-centric design we can take to all of this, which is make it relevant. You can't just teach generic use of AI to everybody because it's not going to be relevant to everybody. And I think that's when you risk maybe losing some people. Yes, we want to bring them along the journey, but if you don't do a little bit of research up front and decide, right, okay, for this type of role in an organization, this is actually where we think AI is going to make the biggest impact for them. Let's kind of give them use cases and things that will make it relevant to them. And that's how, as a user-centric designer, we do system design. You figure out your users and you design a system to meet their needs. The same approach needs to be taken for how you engage your organization and your people with how AI is going to help them rather than scare them.
And no matter what questions I ask you, you still all continue to be really enthusiastic about this. Which is
your
great.
Mission today, is it?
No, I'm just checking because again, one of the things we talked about is like we can exist in a bubble, right? So we are a tech company. We look for ways to embrace these different things. So I guess what I want to do is get under a bit. What's driving your thoughts? What's driving your positivity? So just to share some stories, like so either some customer stories or some personal stories around something that will bring alive for people. Like what's your story that gives you comfort?
Yeah, I think if I start by why I'm comfortable with it, I think it does help being in Generation Z. So I've seen a lot of technology in my life, and I've seen it as something that change is good, basically. So we shouldn't be scared of it. A new way of doing something doesn't mean that it's worse than the previous way. Things can get better and we should embrace it. And also sometimes it's like you don't always have much of a choice. You couldn't be like to Steve Jobs, no, I'm not going to use an iPhone. Like smartphones really came and now they're just something that we use. So I don't know if it's naive, but I'm somewhat comforted by the fact that in probably 5 to 10 years' time, this is just going to be normal and we just have to get through this kind of growing period. And I think if you embrace it, you have a chance to just do more things and better things, the things you enjoy. And I think what we've been speaking about earlier, Craig, is around your job and tasks. Your job won't change. You still add the value to the company or your clients through what you do, but you can change the tasks that you do and use tech to help you do the tasks you enjoy, hopefully, right? And the story that I want to share is a personal one. My mum, she works in NHS. She's a haematology specialist nurse. She's been doing that for many, many, many years. And obviously she spends a lot of time with her patients talking about the blood tests and what they've been through, and then has to summarise it to a GP. And back probably in like the 2000s, she would speak into a physical dictaphone. And I thought, wow, that's so cool when I was like 5. And it's evolved now into like dictaphones on your computer. But now they're using AI to summarise it. And if you think about not just the efficiency of time that will allow her to just have a good, focused conversation with her patient, it also means that people's health aren't jeopardised, because obviously sometimes humans make mistakes, right? But if you've got AI to support you there, you're always going to have the facts that's going to go back to the doctor. So hopefully you're being more efficient, you can see more patients, which is always a bonus, but you can also make sure that you're doing the right thing, and that is checked by good models that they're using within the NHS.
I love that story. I mean, again, what I pick up on is giving the person at this, your mum, a bit more headspace, a bit more time to think about the person, because they've probably got a finite amount of time to do something. And they're using those tools to help.
And it gives them the ability to focus on that task at hand and get on with it. That's great.
Yeah. What about yourself, Dean?
Well, I was just thinking, there was a book by Benedict Carey, How We Learn, and he talks about the power of forgetting. And it kind of goes into that, but it also goes in with some of the customers we've met with, and how when they, of course, use AI, they're not quite sure how to use it. But one of the things that instantly hits with them is being able to focus on one particular topic, whether that's made up of the data they already have access to, or that they're putting into it for that particular training session or learning session. So what happens is, once they see that the initial hurdle of getting started, finding information to focus on that one topic is just dramatically reduced with AI. And then after that, we can start introducing new topics, and also even reevaluate how they're using tools it connects with, like Word and Teams, etc. So, yeah.
Could you expand on that? Were there people who doubted this at the beginning? And if there were, what were some of the things that tipped them over?
I think when it goes back to thinking AI lives in isolation from the other components within the platform they're using. So once they start seeing not only how it works and makes the use of those tools more efficient, but they also see how it creates and helps their current job roles. And once they see the practical use, which is, well, I would say 99% of the time with training and learning, is I want to know practically, how am I going to use this? And how is it going to help me at the end of the day? And once we show that, especially with AI, it's off to the races. Yeah.
I think it's like, I wrote down demystifying. There's a theme about demystifying this scary monster. It's like, it's the equivalent of the monster that lives under the bed, until your parents show you that the cupboard's empty. There's nothing under the bed, right? So demystify it, get people to think about the value, the journey they're going on. Do you have a story to share with us?
I do. Sorry, it just came back to me. Yes, I do. So working with one of our customers who's fully embraced AI, and they've really kind of steamed ahead on the innovation side with AI. And what's made me really comfortable with that is getting involved in that process has made me see how it really unlocks people's ways of thinking outside the box. It doesn't if people embrace it, they're not scared of it, they start to unlock, ideas for potential revenue. And, and the customers are exploring that and unlocking masses of potential with, really simple AI tools that are going to bring massive business benefit. So seeing that organisation do that and seeing how the light bulbs are kind of going on with people as they realise their ideas can be brought to life very quickly with the use of AI is quite inspiring. And seeing somebody kind of take on that maturity head on rather than be hesitant has made me really comfortable with it, because I think if you go into this and it's all just the unknown, you will be scared, because that is generally where fear comes from. However, watching a customer really embrace it and seeing how that has really helped their organisation and their people has given me hope that if others follow suit, it will all turn out fine.
So one of the things I hear in that story is about involving the people who are impacted by it, and I'm recognising and rewarding your talent as opposed to I'm in here to remove you from the equation. And I think if people enjoy the conversation, join into the conversation, they'll see that there's a new role for them. So, and actually seeing that for yourself is much more convincing than being told.
Absolutely.
I hypnotise you, honestly, I'm a good person. I'm not going to put you out of work, right?
And seeing how it enhances what they're already doing and makes them even better at it. you've both proven with your stories.
Yeah. Cool, awesome. So I'm going to do a bit of time travel. I warned you about this, so I hope you brought like your blankets for going into the future, right? I'm thinking there's a lot of change coming in. There's probably going to be people using agents much more in the workplace, probably multiple agents. They're going to have to give up some of the tried and tested signs of success and go more into like the thinking, the human engagement of it. So let's assume that that's been adopted, right? So everyone has your mindset, right? So they're embracing and they're going forward, right? So it's now like sort of 2030, 5 years in the future, right? And I'm not asking you to predict the future, right? I'm not going to hold you to account. We're not going to meet back up here in 5 years' time and I'm going to read these back to you. But when you're thinking about it, what sort of things what will the workplace look like? Or so talk to me about the future of work, right? So just a part of it, what's the future of work in 5 years' time where having an AI agent to support you and help you, AI tools to remove that blank sheet of paper for being creative, what does it feel like to be at work? Dean's nodding the most, right? So I'm going to let him go.
I just time travel while you were speaking.
I feel better, right?
Come back.
Yeah.
I think of where we're at now and where we were 10 years ago. And I foresee a future where it's very similar, where we have organizations using AI to its best, and no one uses any technology to its fullest potential. However, you're still going to have some organizations that use it in silos, and you're going to have some people be the gurus who everyone goes to, and there's going to be those pockets. But what we will see is that the roles that we thought were going to go away are going to be reliant on AI to do it in new ways we never thought possible. That's my time. Now you can hold me to that. In 10 years, and we'll see how it goes.
I was going to ask you to chip in next, Lara, because when we were talking about this before, you'd give me quite a pragmatic view about how much we would embrace some of this technology, how much change would come. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, I'm a bit naive. I think people do adopt change. In 5 years' time, we'll have more of this new generation in the workplace as well. So I think that will be a disruption, but in a good way. And I also think that it will probably make work be a bit more flexible for people, which with different kind of work-life balances and things like that, with people having to, I don't know, care for people or care for their parents or things like that, it just might be easier for you to do your work, which is good. And yeah, I also just think that we'd probably hopefully move towards a better balance between work across organizations, if that makes sense. So right now, as I said, working harder is sometimes glamorized, and that means doing kind of the tougher, harder jobs. And I think we'll just hopefully have a better relationship with work because we'll be using technology in a better way. Sorry. But to Dean's point, I don't think that it's going to be a switch and magically everyone's going to adopt it and everyone's going to get on board. Obviously, we also have like an aging population, so there'll be like older people involved and they might be slower to adopt things, and not everyone will probably want to adopt it because people will be resistant in terms of things like sticking to the status quo, also thinking like around things like the climate as well. So I think there's more challenges around adopting AI than any other technology, but with my younger mindset, I'm like, I think people will move towards it and embrace it with the hope that they can be more productive and still enjoy work, but focus on other things that also bring them joy as well.
Good. I love the fact you brought joy into this. It was one of the questions we talked about before, about bringing some fun back into the workplace, a bit of joy into the experience of learning, experience and using it. So major points for you for bringing joy into a conversation about AI. I'm liking that. What about you, Nicole?
So for me, I think the skills that you need to focus on in 2030 or the prize skills are going to be more around being accountable and actually being more of the leader. In terms of if you've got a team of AI agents executing a lot of stuff for you, the things that are going to be really important is your ability to kind of articulate what you want, what you need, describe how you need to get something done, and then review, direct, steer, tweak. Those kind of skills are going to be incredibly important. So your cognitive load when you come into the workplace in 5 years' time is going to be completely shifted from executional and delivery to I'm just steering, I'm directing, I'm driving that car. I'm not having to worry about changing gears. I'm just steering and focusing on the road. So the shift and the joy should come from actually focusing on the outcomes rather than like just all the busy work that you kind of get lost in sometimes, so that your focus has more space to actually kind of center in on the things that actually matter rather than just getting lost in the noise.
Yeah. So we talk about burnout a lot, you know, it's a real thing now, and I'm glad it's front of mind and people are addressing it. There is a danger that we create the next wave of burnout because we expect people to be infinitely more productive. So how do we think about that? How do we avoid that happening? Do you get any views, Dean?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because a lot of the times with AI right now, it's being pushed as a time saver. So automatically, at least from a worker's point of view, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to embrace it, but what's that other 4 hours or 3 hours going to be filled up with? And on the other side, you've got people who are running organizations who are looking at how can we maximize time now that we're saving it. So what it comes down to is culture. So what's going to happen is we're starting to find out that what we feed into AI in the dataverse, right, to use Microsoft terms, what we feed into it directly affects what we get out of it. So we're effectively creating a reward motivator for AI. We know what it works in humans. We want to be noticed for good work. We want to create something and say, hey, that was a great job. But AI doesn't have that. It's what we feed it. So it's going to be very reliant on culture. It's going to be very reliant on the norms that are fed into it. And also, if it is aligned with your calendar, for example, it's going to know that you're stuck full of projects right now. There's no more you can take on. So we're going to take some of that time away, or maybe even say get a half a day back or something like that. It's going to have to recognize that. It's also going to have to recognize good work.
Yeah. And I like that fact of using AI to help, you know, the individual as well as the organisation. And I think that, as you say, the culture perspective is how are we going to embrace this as an organisation? Because people will see that, you know, so we've gained that productivity for the customer, but nobody likes working here. So when you see it's a balance, you know, and again, I find in a lot of these conversations it comes back to the person. Like, let's be person-centric about this. You know, how do I help that person be more impactful? How do I help that person still have purpose and value in what they do? Anything you want to add about burnout?
It's a difficult one because I think it's going to help people potentially perform higher more consistently, and I think that's the key. So consistency of, you know, performing at 9s and 10s, if you like, is really hard to achieve if you are also doing all the busy work and your cognitive load is like massively full of everything. If AI can take some of that burden away, in theory, you should just be able to perform at that high level more consistently across. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be doing less work, but your work will be focused on other things, more thinking, more kind of the things that sometimes myself, I say I don't have time to think, and a lot of my job is actually thinking. So I think it might not necessarily save me time, but it will give me space in my head to think about stuff.
The old quality versus quantity debate.
Exactly that. And I think that would stop burnout because, you know, me personally, I stress about it when I can't think about things. So I think, but again, it's so role specific. Like, you have to really think about this from a human-centric perspective. Like, what does it mean to this person? And organizations need to understand that as well. Like, how is it going to affect every single person in your organization in terms of what they have on their day-to-day? So the day in the life is going to look very different for every person.
When we spoke about it, Lara, before, a phrase you used that I liked was like the new world of work. You know, so there's this new world of work with new rules in it, and so it's not just the task; it's the reward, the activity that you're doing, and I love this idea of giving us more think time, because that is probably what most people want, right? Whereas the reward is. I love your phrase of busy work. Like, oh, look at Craig doing busy work. He's really productive. He's doing more of that busy
You're good
work
at that.
stuff.
Don't change yourself.
You're only kidding, right? Okay, you know. So there is that busy work, but it's a different type of work.
It's a different type of work.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Lara?
Yeah, I think it's important to not forget that we're still people at the same time and focus on like the humans that you have in your organization. So burnout is still going to happen. It might just look a little bit different. It might not. It might even creep on people a little bit because people are being more productive, if that makes sense. So you're getting through your task quicker, or you're getting through work quicker than you used to. So you're thinking, oh, I'm feeling fine, but then burnout could still creep on you. So I think it's important to still recognise that. And I really like what Nicole was saying around thinking about it in different roles, and it just comes back to making sure that you've thought about a proper approach when thinking about your organisation. Because I think another thing that happens as well is that AI is a big umbrella term, right? And I think it's not one size fits all for everybody's role. So how I will use AI within a role in a data and AI team is different to how Nicole uses it. It's different how Dean will use it. So yeah, the approach is really important, and to think about your people first is also very important.
And another thing we spoke about was the difference between roles and tasks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people quite often define their role by the tasks they do, right? And if tasks can be automated, or AI can make it simpler, if I'm defined by my tasks because that is my role, whereas that changes. Anything you want to add on the discussion or the thoughts around like task versus roles?
Yeah, exactly. I think tasks often make you feel productive, right? And your tasks often describe what your job is, right? So you think, oh, on Monday morning I do this, or on the first of every single month I do that, and perhaps those are tasks that AI can help you and perhaps remove off your plate. Just because you don't do those tasks anymore, or those tasks look different, doesn't mean that you still don't add value to your company and your clients. So I think there's also a bit to recognise with, I guess, the psychological aspect of will people still feel valued if their jobs are just tasks, if that makes sense. So you would hope that if you were working for a good organisation, that yes, you're still valued because you make an individual contribution. It's not just the task that you do, it's that you're hired because, Craig, you add value to a client. That's different to how Nicole adds value to a client.
Brings up a good point, though, about the use of AI and defining the person and their self-awareness of what they do, because they're still going to have that knowledge to put in the prompt to get the results they want. So the task and the role, like you said, that's an interesting one, because I really hadn't heard that before. But you can see how those terms are going to have to take new identities and new definitions going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because if people don't know how to use AI, they're still going to do that same task on a Monday morning, right? So it comes back to the approach that organisations have to take to enable people to be as productive as they can be. And I don't mean to be productive so everyone gets burnt out or things like that, but it's like, how does everyone start on the same kind of level playing field, specific for their role as well? So do you want to have some people that still do that task, so there's a human element to it, or is nobody ever going to do that task again? How do you prioritise who gets which training and things like that? I think there's a lot for organisations to think about for it to be a level playing field when, as you were saying earlier, Nicole, more people will be performing at nines and tens because they've got AI teammates to support them. So.
They're embracing it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the potential that is being sold, right? Yeah. The potential of what AI can unlock is being screamed from the rooftops by all these tech organizations. But really it comes down to, you are still a human, you are still accountable for your work. And just being an incredible, user of a tool, like in any industry, in any field that's being automated, will still help you become a better contributor to your organization. You just have to detach from the fact that, it's not here to replace you.
Yeah. And where I get comfort from the conversation is that we're not finding it difficult to talk about burnout. We're not finding it difficult to talk about what this means for people. And that, I think, speaks testament to what is success when you start to bring AI into the workplaces. No secret agendas, right? Transparency, honesty, engaging people in the process. So what can seem daunting once you start talking to people, and I think it was you, Dean, said, once you get started, let's get started, right? Once you get started, bring people into the process, the opportunity to embrace it, new ways of working are massive. So I'm going to ask you all to role play being someone watching this, okay? So imagine you're watching this, and apart from being blown away by the content that the three of you have shared so far, and how humble you are as well, right? So imagine you're a leader in an organisation, and you've been tasked with bringing AI into the workplace. What would you say is one of your biggest responsibilities for that successful adoption of that change? So Nicole, if I can start with you. So you're now leading an organisation. You have an AI agenda. AI is coming into the workplace. What's a new thing that should be on your agenda as a leader?
It's a safe space. If you're scared of it, you're probably not the only one. So just that culture of transparency and, you know, creating that environment where people are okay to shout about what makes them uncomfortable about it. So yeah, just creating that space for people to really voice their fears or their excitement equally, right?
Yeah.
So it's just creating that.
I like what you did there. Took it down to excitement as
Yeah,
well.
of
That
course.
safe space, you know. But
I
what are
love
your
twists.
hopes, right? And what are your fears around it, and it's okay to have them, you know. Because usually the first person to say it, everyone else goes, "I was thinking that as well." So who's going to be the first person? So that's a great tip. Great tip. What would your leadership tip be?
We've mentioned it earlier around being really transparent with the journey that you're going on, embracing the fact that it is a journey, and probably setting out like a vision for the company moving forward, so people can have a bit of assurance and confidence, if that makes sense. I love your point around making sure people feel safe, because there is you can't run away from what the news is saying or what you read on your phone and stuff like that. That, you know, jobs are being cut in certain sectors and certain areas. So I think organizations have a responsibility to make their people feel safe, but also say, this is how we're doing AI in our organization. This is what the roadmap looks like for us. This is what the vision looks like for us. And talking about that clearly with their people in the organization.
You're definitely two leaders that I would follow.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking that myself.
The bar is high, Dean. The bar is high. Yeah. So what would you add to the leadership responsibilities?
Well, I think along with any new initiative, leaders need to remember, if leadership doesn't use it, no one else will effectively. So that needs to be kept in mind. But at the same time, it's seeing where it fits into the culture currently, like we talked about earlier. And what do we need to reevaluate? Are we in a rush? Why are we in a rush? What do we have? What can we use? And how will AI enhance it? And it starts with me.
Yeah. These are three really lovely guiding principles, like creating that safe space, being confident, being transparent, leading by example, all great leadership traits, which I think get magnified in the space of AI because there is so much uncertainty about it. So, but there's also the people that are really keen to engage. And if organisations don't create that space, they'll create this shadow IT. So they'll bring in ChatGPT on their phone, or they'll start using these tools in different places. So let's have a bit of an explore of what are the challenges associated with not creating a space to bring AI into the workplace, and how we mitigate some of those challenges. So, Dean, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the idea of risk-taking, it just sounds great. However, it doesn't sound too inclusive when you think about the full breadth of the types of workers in any organization. So sometimes putting those guardrails and saying, this is where you're going to use AI within these parameters, will give a focus to the risk takers, but also to the people who are hesitant, because then they know there's some structure to how they're going to use it and how they're going to take that risk. So I think what you could do is kind of tiptoe around how to implement it, but you've got to remember, when you're trying to make an inclusive push for AI, it's great to start a pilot, similar to what Nicole and Laura said earlier, but do that around certain parameters that allows more input and more experimentation.
So what would some of those parameters be?
Well, I think starting with individual teams and making sure that there's a secure source of data that's going to be used. There's no outside data coming in. It's all based upon the data that you already have access to. And then what are we going to do with it? What type of prompts are we looking at? What are the components of a good prompt? And again, this comes back to training and how it's going to be introduced in a practical way that is inclusive of all the learners in the room.
And other conversations we've had is like security and data are two things that have come up again and again in the conversations. So if I don't create an environment for my organisation to do this and embrace it, the danger is someone fires some confidential data into an online model, right? Or someone exposes themselves to something through not having those cyber constraints round about it. And if we create that space for people to innovate in, they've got more chance of being successful. So it's almost like you can't not take part in this, right? So if you're sitting around your C-suite table as a set of ostriches with your head in the ground, right? It's not going to stop it happening, right? Just because you can't see it, you're not saying the direction, it's already happening. So again, it's like not only the doubting Thomases, but the people that are really keen to do it. How do we set them up for success as much as anything? Lara, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it reminds me of a point that you were making earlier, Nicole, around if you've got great tech at home, you kind of expect that to also be in your workplace. Now you don't want to end up in a massive data breach because someone's bringing sensitive data into a personal use of a language model or something like that. But another point, slightly differently, also reminds me, if you want to attract and retain good talent, especially in technical roles, people would have an expectation if you're in a data role or AI role that you're going to have certain tools and to use in the job. And if you're saying, oh, this is going to be next year or 2 years down the line, people might want to look elsewhere into more innovative companies to want to, continue to advance their skills and continue to do more new and innovative things. So I think it's important to remember that you're going to have people that are scared, but you're going to have people that are really like chomping at the bit to do these cool things. So you need to have controlled areas to enable them, or they might look sideways into other organizations to say like, I can't do this here, I could do it in another job. So I might want to look elsewhere as well.
That's a brilliant dimension to bring in. How does AI play into your talent agenda? So to attract the right talent and then to retain them. So because there's a danger you attract them and you go, I can't do anything here now. So rushing them to disappointment. So it's that, how do we attract them, retain them, give them the space, set them up for success? Anything you want to add?
I think you have to bake it into your digital literacy plans, right? You kind of have to really kind of make it part of what it means to be kind of, it sounds terrible, but like compliant with your organisation's, acceptable use policies. Which sounds terribly boring and not that exciting. But in my analogy of the car that I was talking about earlier, you want to make sure people have got a driver's license, right, before they get in the vehicle, right? So if you're going to use a tool that's as complex and as amazing and as exciting as AI and really excited, I mean, you could love cars as a toddler, but you'd never let a toddler in the car to drive it, right? So, you have to have passed a certain level of literacy around security, around, safety in a digital world or in the corporate world. Before you get access to the tool. And I think it's just about making sure that's in place as the foundation before you let people go and have fun with it.
And I'd like to congratulate you for finding an analogy that works.
Yeah, again and again.
You've come back to it.
Let's just keep going.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. And I reflect on how we're looking to bring AI into FSP, with a greater use. So thinking about it, like how are individuals using it? How are we baking it into our propositions? How are we thinking, looking up and into the future and going, how can we change things for the better by using it? And so that kind of structured approach, multi-layered approach, but taking people on the journey, giving them the tools for success, channeling that enthusiasm, getting, because if people are fearful but they see the enthusiasm coming from the people they trust, that's what's going to take people on a journey. So again, we keep coming back to people, right? It's amazing. Yeah. So here's a conversation about AI that keeps coming back to people. So how do we make people have that joyful learning experience, that great work experience? And as leaders, how do we set them up for success?
Well, even here at FSP, when we've had our pilot groups, they always involve actually talking to each other, manipulating objects, and then going and using AI in a productive way and to test, and then to take risks. And I think once you combine those elements, and again, it goes back to that culture and the training aspects, but once you have those things in play, I think it's going to go a little bit smoother.
And I think that training, like making it a shared experience, right? So it's not about going to a darkened room, do your AI course, get your AI qualification, appear out in a genius ready to go, but like how would we as a cohort learn? How would we learn at the same pace, share experiences, tell stories, play back to the organisation the value that we've got? So again, giving that power back to the people that, as a leader, I trust you to go on this journey. I'm giving you the tools, but I can't expect you to come back and give me it back. Like, what did you learn? What should we do? How fast should we go? What should we not do? So creating that culture of learning and sharing, it's got to be a great foundation for, embracing the ongoing change, because you've alluded to it before. This is not the first wave that's hitting us. It's doubtful to be the last wave that's hitting us. So how do we set up a learning organisation that's comfortable with the change that's coming, that knows you're going to create the support round about them? So I'm on a constant learning journey. And I love that, right? Because I'm getting a purposeful job. I'm investing in myself. I'm becoming a more impactful person.
I think you hit on something there. So is a learning culture a prerequisite to introducing something as powerful as AI? Because you're going to have to constantly, like you said, this is not the first, this is not the last wave. It's going to keep coming.
Yeah, it's that lifelong learning, and we've bonded over many a cup of coffee about that, and it's baking that into people's mindset that it's not, oh, thank goodness I've got the skills, the change is stopping, I can settle into the new norm. The new norm is there's more demand coming, there's more change, and how do we take the fear out of that, which is where we started with this. And you keep bringing it back to joy, right? So well done, right? So, it's a good way to kind of end that. It's like, how do we create like joyful learning experiences that people feel valued as individuals? Because organisations are groups of individuals, and if we're all feeling valued, supporting each other, it's limitless the impact we can have. So I want to explore getting started with this. So I'm feeling lots of energy from the room. Like you've bust the myths, right? You've given me the positivity. You've overcome my challenges. You've told me why you're excited about it. So I'm now good to go, right? So let's bring AI into this workplace. So how do we set people up for success? So there's one extreme of command and control. You must do that, and there's the other extreme, like knock yourself out, just play with the AI. Neither extreme really works. So in this space, given that it's individuals having an individual experience and they'll all be impacted in a different way, how would you think about like the practicality of getting started and giving people the tools to succeed? So I'll maybe start with yourself, Dean.
Yeah, I think first thing is to take stock of what current platforms and tools are being used, what guardrails have been put in place and why, and seeing how AI can be used to enhance those current ways of working. Also, we've got to take a look at the training aspect and how all types of individuals are being catered to use those tools. So we have accessibility issues, for example, and AI is a great tool in and of itself because it has text recognition and it can give the same outputs as anyone using AI. So that's a good place to start. Now, where it goes from there, there's some risk-taking involved. So it's up to those individual organizations with their cultural baggage to take that on board, I think.
And I think there's a theme about, everyone's job will change, let's be comfortable with it. But some jobs will be changed more than others. So as well as that, like diversity of need, there's a diversity of impact. So for someone who is going to be greatly impacted, any additional things we need to give them, like Lara, in terms of like support to embrace this and get started?
Yeah, I think there'll be a big emphasis on training. I think some people in more technical roles will have to embrace it a bit quicker than others, if that makes sense. And I think it's always better when you have a controlled, smaller remit. So for instance, if it's one certain team that will start like from day one and we roll it out slower, I think that's probably a better approach than just diving in straight into the deep end. It's better to have an element of control. And I think about some of the things that we do with clients around using Power BI for data analytics, having like community of practices and like champions and stuff like that to kind of show ways, show examples and to kind of be role models for good uses is probably good. But on the flip side, also recognizing that you'll have some people that aren't really that interested other than the kind of base level, like things that are forced onto them. So again, it comes down to looking at the people within your organization and that the fact that one size won't fit all. You can't think that everyone's going to want to be this AI whiz from tomorrow. There's some people that are just going to be like, I need to be slower, or it's not as relevant to my role as others. And yeah, I also think it's dependent sometimes on the toolkit that you use. Like for instance, if you look at the Microsoft suite, it's advancing and moving towards AI. So therefore, you're kind of forced to jump on that journey because that's a toolkit you have. There'll be other areas within your organization that you might want to implement new tools, or the tool that you're using before no longer is fit for purpose or doesn't put you as a market competitor. So again, there's a lot of things to think about, but I would also say focus on the training, making sure people are enabled and feel empowered to use it, and also slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah. On that training aspect, I totally agree, because I think it's okay for organizations to step back before implementing AI and using, for example, Excel and say, do we know how to use Excel, right? Does everyone know how to use it? And let's train a bit on that before we jump and go forward with using AI as an extra component to enhance the use of Excel, and then Power BI going on from there.
Yeah, building on both those points, I think that's why organizations are doing pilots, because you can use your pilot as a discovery to figure out what should our guardrails be, right? Because sometimes organizations don't even know themselves where there are gaps in their policies and their procedures and the way they're doing stuff. So piloting and getting a a diverse group of people, from, you know, people who are extremely comfortable and excited and really enthusiastic, to those who are like really hesitant and really avoidant of what's going. If you can get a really good kind of pilot going and get feedback from that whole spectrum of people in your organization, you can then use that to inform your strategy, your culture around AI, and, you know, test it with people and prove it before, validate it before you suddenly roll it out to the whole company. And I think that's a nice kind of middle ground between just mandating how everybody should use it from the beginning, or, you know, just letting a free for all and figuring out where the chips lay. You know what I mean? Like, so I think a pilot is seems to be, so far at least from our experience, the best approach to take.
Because that spirit of experimentation. So we're going into this to learn, right? Not to prove that I'm right, right? It's, I have a hypothesis, let's learn if that's right or wrong. So that's a different way of thinking about it than, you know, this is my first stage of it and absolute certainty, and I've committed to it, so I can't admit I'm wrong, right? So that culture of experimentation
you
seems
don't
to
need
be
to have the
something.
answer straight out the gate for everybody and then feel like you have to backtrack afterwards to like,
Another thing I would add to that is people are using AI more and more in their home lives. So that blur. So that blur will happen between home and work life. So helping people understand, like, you're already using AI here, and this is helpful. So you're already on that journey. So again, it's like breaking down the barriers, demystifying it, get people to know you've probably already got some of the skills, right? And we're just going to help you build on that. So it's like that theme again of taking people on a journey, giving them the skills to succeed. Is awesome.
I think it's going to follow a similar path to how just technology in general has raised people's expectations in terms of technology and systems. In B2C, you know, commercial world, you expect a certain level of quality and experience when it comes to using a website, using an app, something like that. You know, why shouldn't it be the same in your work environment? Why shouldn't you have a joyful, delightful experience of using the tools in your workplace? And I think if you can get that balance right between, you know, delivering an experience that feels as seamless as you know what you do when you're at home with the Internet of Things, you know, managing everything, then that barrier and that familiarity is less of a hurdle to overcome, because you don't have to put it in the context of, oh, okay, I can do this so much easier on this personal app. Why can't we just use that? Now you can do it just as easily in your work apps. So, and I
think a reality check I would drop in the conversation is, I've had a lot of bad experiences with AI. Nothing life-threatening, but, you know, thank you for introducing me to your AI agent, which is obviously designed to make your life easier, not mine. Right? So I'm having these great experiences at home, right? I'm maybe having like more bad than good experiences as a consumer. So again, it's facing into the, you know, like, what can we learn from that? Like not to rush into it, like not to design something that's purely for your goal, etc. So we keep coming back to that human-centric design. You know? It's almost as if you work in a human-centric design.
Never guessed I would steer the conversation towards that.
Totally surprised. But it's a great outcome for us. But before we finish, given what we've spoken about today, is there any sort of last thoughts or anything you didn't get a chance to talk about that you'd like to mention? So maybe start with yourself, Lara. Anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say that I think it's an exciting time. Like, we will find joy at work. It's not scary. We should continue to bust these myths. And that's not me saying that I can't understand why people would be scared, because it's a change. Change is scary, but I think, we should embrace it, and it will make a disruption, but a positive one.
Yeah, love it. Dean?
I'm thinking of how it gamifies work. And once people realize that, they're going to have a new perspective on how they go about their tasks, which goes towards the burnout we talked about earlier. I put in this little prompt, I get something out of it. It's instantaneous, it's instant gratification, and if I get better at it, I even get better results. So it's a process, and once you get it down, you start realizing, wow, this is really helpful, but at the same time, I'm getting something out of it, and it really is helpful in that way.
Awesome. Nicole, anything you'd like to add before we
just reiterate an earlier point? You know, no matter what the tool can do, you're still in the driver's seat. You're still in control, and you're still accountable for what you do with that tool. So that's it. But just remember that, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. So I think it's a great chat. For me, it's sort of framing like the new world of work. Right. So I like that phrase. I'm going to use it. Right. So the new world of work, and how do people define their new purpose in that new world of work. So we're defined quite often by our jobs. When you meet somebody, it's like, hello, my name's Craig and I do this, right? Or you meet somebody, what is it you do, right? So if we in society define ourselves so much by our jobs, and we have that fear that's getting taken away from us, like how do we help people like create that new purpose, that new value? And another thing that I really liked is joy, right? So like bringing that joy and fun into it. So change is unsettling, right? Particularly if you don't feel like you're part of it or you can control it. But it doesn't have to be like that. So let's be transparent. Let's take those leadership skills that you talked about. So thank you very much.